Can Celsius Network retain its customer assets? I'm sure that there are a lot of people that want to know, and a lot of people that are complaining since their assets have been locked up, and rightfully so. Because, as we all know, Celsius Network has filed for bankruptcy, meaning they are unable to pay their debts, and now they've frozen everyone's assets. This is a big problem, and a lot of people have been complaining. And I actually went onto the Strato network, the Strato website, where it's got the entire pleadings for Celsius Network. And I actually pulled up some of the letters of people that have been complaining. And so in this video, I'd like to hopefully address that question to these poor people that have lost a lot of money, about if they can really take your assets. So yeah, if you like my content, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so let's start. Obviously, there's quite a lot here of documents already. It's already going up to page 13. Here, I'm one of the Celsius users that has been affected. By the way, this is all public correspondence. Unfortunately, I have all of my life savings held on the Celsius platform. My family trusted me to store their Bitcoin on my Celsius account. However, we did not expect to be blindsided. There was a lot of money that we were going to use as leverage for a better life, not having to live paycheck to paycheck, not having to worry about rent due, being able to pay off our debts, college tuition, and so on. And you can see that there's actually a lot of people that are in this position. Like we have this person over here, 75 years old, a retired research scientist, and has been investing for over 50 years. Okay, and investing in cryptocurrency for 6 years now. This over here is what got me. He was listening to the AMAs every Friday, and he convinced me and others that Celsius was safer than a bank. And if you go through a lot of these letters, you can see a lot of that. So what Celsius was representing to people was that they're obviously very trustworthy, because you know you're not going to run into a lot of trouble, obviously, if you deposit your money with a bank. Your money is safe, it's regulated. So obviously by saying that to people, they're representing that they're very trustworthy, so much so that they're even safer than a bank. Okay. Now this guy, this is really sad. I did not retire until 69 years old to have a sufficient nest egg for retirement, and invested a good portion of my total assets in cryptos. While I've done well with cryptos until Celsius bankruptcy, the lots of cryptos that are stored at Celsius would have a significant impact on my retirement. Proper care for my wife, who is ill, and I am her caregiver, as well as my estate. So you can see, and he had 24 different coins in Celsius. So this guy lost a lot, and he's not the only one. There's this other person here. In Celsius, I have not only my hard-earned savings, I've recommended it to other family members, and now I'm liable to bear the entire loss because I passed on those scammers' promises. This person here, you see, here's another representation that was made the days before Celsius and Alex Machinsky lied to us, saying everything was all right and that they had liquidity. While filing for bankruptcy, they were still letting people add collateral while stopping withdrawals. In actual fact, I went to their website and it looks like they're still open, but they have disclosed that they have filed for bankruptcy at least. But quite shocking, actually. Yeah, another person here, having lost a considerable amount of my savings and hard-earned money, which is impacting myself and my family, I'm writing you with hopes you could help us the injustice and the hard time we are facing due to the wrongful actions of Celsius and of their lies and fraudulent actions. So clearly, there's been a misrepresentation here. People had a lot of faith. They really believed in this organization. And what's strange about it is they were in touch with the people in charge, like Alex, with the regular AMAs. So there was a lot of trust and a community that was built up. Now, I myself would never recommend, not financial advice, going on to an exchange where you don't have your own keys for exactly this reason. Because even the most trustworthy place can let you down. Just look at these people. And I feel really bad for them. But at the end of the day, you also shouldn't be risking like your entire life savings, most especially in one spot. But putting that aside, I still want to get to that question of whether Celsius Network has a right to keep these crypto assets. Now, there's a special clause that they had in their agreements, okay, besides the fact that they were touting that they're safer than a bank and promising returns and promising transparency, they had these terms of use, which I found on this blog over here. Coppola comment. It's a very good article. I was actually trying to find their terms of use and I managed to find it here. So I will put the link in the description if you want to take a read yourself. But basically here, consent to Celsius's use of digital assets, okay? It says over here, and this is because Celsius had different programs. One of them was the earn service. Okay, so from my understanding, that's where you basically handed over your crypto to Celsius, and you would earn interest on that. Now it says here, you acknowledge that with respect to digital assets used by Celsius pursuant to this paragraph, you will not be able to exercise rights of ownership. Celsius may receive compensation in connection with lending or otherwise using digital assets in its business to which you have no claim or entitlement. And in the event that Celsius becomes bankrupt, enters liquidation, or is otherwise unable to repay its obligations, any eligible digital assets used in the earn service or as collateral under the borrow service may not be recoverable. And you may not have any legal remedies or rights in connection with Celsius obligations to you other than your rights as a creditor of Celsius under any applicable laws. Okay, now the first thing I want to say is when you go, let's say you're going to fix your car, right? And you hand over your car. When you hand over your car, all you're doing is you're changing possession. Okay, you're not transferring your ownership to the person that's going to fix your car. Because if you think about it in that situation, it's crazy because you're basically saying, I'm not exercising ownership of my car anymore. If something happens, that's it. You've got no claim. Okay, and remember your claims as owner are most powerful. Okay, so I just wanted to use that as an analogy for this scenario where they have this term here. I'm not sure how express it was. If it was every time you entered into this agreement where you gave him your crypto, you gave him possession of your crypto, let's put it that way, if this actual agreement came up. But the fact of the matter is it was there and in effect you were consenting to this. And then this one over here. Well, first of all, actually, they're saying, okay, Celsius is saying acknowledging it's not a bank, which is fairly obvious. Eligible digital assets are not legal tender. Celsius is not a bank or depository institution, and your Celsius account is not a deposit account. Eligible digital assets represented in your Celsius account are not held by Celsius as a fiduciary, are not insured by any private or governmental insurance plan, including the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation or the Securities Investor Protection Corporation. So typically, from my understanding, banks they have these insurances for your deposits, and are not covered by any compensation scheme. Your Celsius account does not constitute an investment contract or a security, is not transferable, and may not be traded, exchanged, or sold to any third party under any circumstances. So what they're doing here is, and this is where I disagree with what's happening from a legal perspective, they're acknowledging they're not a bank, which is obvious, okay, because they're not dealing with fiat currency, okay, it's crypto, and they're not registered as a bank. They don't have any of the duties that a bank has, okay, and obviously there's none of those protections of being with a bank that's regulated, okay. So they're telling you that, okay, and then at the same time they're telling you that there's no fiduciary relationship, okay, and it's not an investment contract. Now, to me, this is like, what are they then? Because there has to be a relationship, okay? There's when you enter into that agreement to give them your crypto, there's an understanding that in exchange for that, I'm going to get a certain amount of interest back. So there is a contract, there is an agreement, and let's be honest, it is an investment. That's what an investment is about. It's about making returns back on your money, making a profit, okay? And obviously, there is a trust relationship. There has to be a trust relationship. You are trusting these people with your asset on the promise that you will get a return on that, okay? So that brings me to the answer to the question, which is, can Celsius retain crypto assets? Now, they're saying they can on the basis of these terms of conditions or terms of use. But I'm saying that, so basically they've contracted out of the fiduciary relationship. And that's where I believe they've made a full mistake, okay? You cannot actually, although it's a contentious argument, a lot of people may disagree, you can't actually contract out of your fiduciary relationship, okay? So I was doing research on that issue, and I came across this article. Okay, first let's look at what is a fiduciary. A fiduciary is a person or organization that acts on behalf of another person or persons, putting their clients' interests ahead of their own, with a duty to preserve good faith and trust. Being a fiduciary thus requires being bound both legally and ethically, okay, to act in another's best interest. That's now where this ethical part is quite important, okay, because when you read those other people's letters, clearly you can see that they feel wronged, okay, so there's an underlying moral notion here that even if there was a term excluding that trust relationship, it still feels wrong what they've done, okay. A fiduciary, okay, I'm not going to go through all of that, but what's important here, there is definitely a financial element, bankers, insurance agents, okay, so yeah. An investment fiduciary is anyone with legal responsibility for managing somebody else's money, such as a member of the investment committee of a charity. Okay, so that's exactly what happened here, okay? People, millions of people, trusted Celsius Network with managing their crypto, Okay, and for that, they bore a legal responsibility. Now, the question is, can they contract out of that legal responsibility or that relationship? So, all credit due here to this article. It is by Ernest Lim, Contracting Out of Fiduciary Duties. It's quite an extensive article, okay? So I will put the link if you want to read it, but basically over here, yeah. So the problem comes in, right? And I'll actually show you as an example here. If you do a simple Google search on contracting out of a fiduciary relationship, generally speaking, fiduciary relationships arise out of contracts. Here, one person usually agrees to act in the interest of another person. Okay, now this is a fundamental mistake, and it's quite a strong argument that fiduciary duties extend beyond contractual relationships. So over here, it summarizes it as follows. Law and economic scholars view fiduciary duties as a standard form of contract comprising default rules of which participants are free to contract out. For example, Celsius Network. To them, fiduciary obligations perform a gap-filling function by allowing terms to be implied into the agreement so the parties do not and should not need to agree to everything in advance. So let's ignore the fact for now that Celsius contracted it out of the agreement. What, generally speaking, would be the view of the fiduciary relationship is that when they entered into the contractual relationship, the two parties, the beneficiary and the fiduciary, sometimes not everything is recorded in a contractual relationship. So everything that's recorded is express, and then you have your implied terms. And your implied terms is that fiduciary relationship, that fiduciary duty to act in the other person's best interests. And so what's happened is, over a process of time, fiduciary duties have been boxed in to fitting into contracts, to fill in loopholes, and creates implied terms. From a stance coming, like you still want to protect the beneficiary, you still want to make sure people uphold their general duties. But now the problem is where you can contract in, you can contract out. And that's where the view comes that you can opt out of the fiduciary package, okay, which is what Celsius Network tried to do, okay. But what this person basically does and shows through this article is that viewing fiduciary duties as contracts is erroneous because fiduciary obligations differ from contracts, okay, in terms of doctrine, ethical basis, and purpose, okay. So they are beyond the sphere of contract, okay. Not to say they're excluded, but they are in a way above it, just because of where they come from. That they have that underlying ethical basis, like I said. So like, okay, and obviously their purpose, okay, which is to promote trust, protect trust between parties. If we go further up here, here, in summary then, in English law, all express or implied fiduciary duties can be excluded. Okay, so that's under English law. As I'm saying, this conclusion is highly problematic, as will be shown in the examine of the director's fiduciary duties under common law, so the law of the land, and statutes. Okay, so obviously there's the duty to act honestly, and then the duty to act fairly, and I'm not going to go into all of those. Suffice to say that you can't contract something that is illegal. Okay, so you can't have an agreement where you contract to kill someone or steal from someone. That contract is not valid. So it's basically to say that that fiduciary duty, that relationship that exists between the parties, is a part of the law, and contract cannot be above it. You cannot exclude it from the contract in the same way that you cannot include theft as a part of the contract. And so for that reason, I would say that that clause where they attempted to remove the fiduciary relationship while at the same time absolving themselves of any liability, they're not a bank, basically washing their hands scot-free, it's completely, totally not valid. And therefore, there was a trust relationship between the parties, which has been breached. And in terms of that, the beneficiaries can sue. And I'm not fully aware of American law, but I'm sure that there are penalties and even fines or imprisonment that can be imposed for that. But the point being that this whole argument that Celsius Network has, that because of that clause, they're entitled to withhold crypto from the rightful owners, and that they even transferred ownership to them when there was no duty on them in return to act in good faith, in trust, and not intentionally withhold their crypto from them like they're doing right now. It's completely erroneous. There is no basis for it in law. There's no way that they could have contracted that out, in my opinion, of course. But I'll leave the rest up to you. And to those of you that did lose your money, think about this, especially if you are pursuing Celsius. Yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. And thank you for watching my video. I'll see you in the next one.